So I want to go through what the three components that I look for when I'm checking to see if someone's had a Kensho experience. And the three components, the first is a deep experience of what I call absence of self. In traditional Buddhist language, this would be emptiness of self or no self. I prefer the term absence to emptiness simply because emptiness is a very common word in English, and there's also a psychological use for it. If you were to say someone feels empty, it would be pointing to feeling a sense of deficiency. And that's not what we're doing when we make contact with this quality of the absolute. The felt sense of absence of self, it's a normal individual. If I were to stop someone on the street and say, "Who are you?" they would check in. They would probably say their name, maybe where they live, what age or work they do, their family status, maybe likes and dislikes, education, a variety of things. And all these are markers within society of who people are, what their identity is. And in the absence of self experience, most of that is unavailable. We would probably know our name and some of the basic facts, but we wouldn't have a sense of connection or ownership to it. And normally we self-reference based on likes and dislikes, who we take ourselves to be, things we're good at, things we're not good at. And when we are in the experience of absence of self, all of those are absent. We check in, who am I? And there's just a blankness, a nothingness, a kind of a question mark. And the absence of self experience can arise independently of a Kensho. It can arise on meditation retreat. It's not uncommon for people to have that experience, not knowing who I am exactly. That's part of the process of retreat, or can be. And this is something that can also last for hours, days, weeks, months. So the initial reaction when we first experience absence of self is to quickly reestablish the self, to find the different, what I call markers of me, and assert those. So we're clear, oh, here I am, I found myself. Okay, everything's fine now. I know who I am. Because there's a kind of fear we can have, or a worry and anxiety about not knowing who we are, and we can extend that, extrapolate that into the future, and have a belief that we won't be able to function if we don't have a self. How am I going to do anything? How am I going to interact with others? How am I going to work and support myself? And so the typical conclusion is I'm going to end up alone. I'm going to end up unemployed, probably homeless, living on the street. That's the outcome if I turn away from or let go of this sense of self. Of course, it couldn't be further from the truth. It's actually easier to function, and we get along and connect more deeply and authentically with people without having that veil of the self always between us. The second component of an awakening is seeing clearly one's true nature, the absolute, as true identity. So, as I mentioned at the start of our time together today, Kensho is the awakening of the absolute to itself in a particular location or consciousness. And it's not just the awakening. Part of this experience of this component is, this is who I really am. This is me. This is who I am at my core. So there's a real identification with it. The absolute is me, is usually how that gets framed. And then the third component is a deep unity or love experience. And this would be the love from the absolute, unconditioned universal love. And it would be a sense of everything is within the same oneness, or everything is part of the fabric of oneness. So be feeling that everything has a sameness to it that is the absolute. So all three of these components would have to be present for me to confirm a Kensho in someone's experience. And the Kensho can last different durations. I've had students who have had effectively 1 minute Kenshos, so a quick flash. One of the ways famous Zen master Dogen talked about Kensho was falling away of mind and body. And this is the experience. That's the absence of self. When the sense of self drops, it's what's left, and we turn from the conditioned to the unconditioned, and that's where we recognize who we truly are. The Kensho can last days, weeks, months. It can last a long time, and so the depth of the Kensho, as we might refer to it, is really talking about how long the sense of self is absent and how long the vastness of the absolute is in its place. After Kensho, there begins the long work of moving between steeping in the vastness of the absolute and being in personality. So some people believe that with having Kensho, the personality will be gone forever. That's not typically how it works. Our investment in the personality weakens, softens, and we recognize that sometimes we're the vastness and sometimes I'm this me. And part of the journey of the post-Kensho work is looking at the behavior and the attitudes of the personality to see what isn't relevant anymore, what's outdated and can be released. And so this is how in the process of Kensho and awakening, we refine and we upgrade our personality to be a more and more functional human being. And we drop a lot of the neuroses that most people carry little by little. And that allows the absolute to more fully abide in our consciousness.